I am Jeff Foxworthy, and welcome to Gamekeeper Podcast. If you want to learn more about farming for wildlife and habitat management, then, buddy, you are in the right place. Join the Gamekeeper crew direct from Mossy Oak Land Enhancement Studio as they discuss the latest wildlife and habitat management practices, news, and, of course, hunting. There's no telling what you'll learn, but I'm going to tell you, I bet it's interesting. Enjoy.
We're live in 3, 2, 1.
All right, everybody. Yeah, welcome. This is, the week of Thanksgiving. We have a lot to be thankful for.
Oh, my gosh.
Tons to be thankful for. And it's, deer season.
I would say this is Thanksgiving year, but it's Thanksgiving life.
That's true.
That's the way to be all the time.
Good point.
That learning to have a heart of gratitude is when you can get there.
It's the basis of life.
What do you say, vitamin G?
Vitamin G. Got to have that vitamin G. Gratitude.
I like that. Dudley, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Well, I can't complain. I'm real excited about Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I've loved this. There's the Friday after Thanksgiving and that weekend is usually good hunting.
Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm. We're going to get a really serious cold snap, finally.
Friday should be really good.
A true hard freeze.
True hard freeze.
Yeah, we'll need it. We need it. Sure do.
Just been getting ready for the holiday. Cooked a pig leg on the smoker. Just, getting fired up for the holiday season. Yep.
Have you hunted yet?
Yeah, a little bit.
All
I
right.
would call it light hunting.
Light. I got you. Half game keeping.
Went to the woods.
Half hunting.
Did you go to the woods is a better question.
I parked and sat in a lawn chair a couple times with my tripod.
How about that?
Looking down a long lane.
How about that?
The way I see it, let's not booger the place up early. Let's kind of let things calm down.
I'm a big fan of that.
Hunt close to the gate, that kind of thing. Do some meat collecting close to the gate. When the rut rolls around, go into the inner sanctum and hunt.
We're into do the destruction early mode right now.
Okay, yeah.
Because he's got young.
Yeah, meat eaters.
They're a lot like, remind me a lot of my two when they were little. They were serious, I told people, serious trophy hunters, very selective about what they shot. It absolutely had to have hair on it before they pulled the trigger.
Oh, my goodness. Hey, so I got a quote for y'all. Let me see if y'all can figure out who made this quote. So it says, "My life in the woods taught me to value the wild land and its game more than any gold or treasure." Who do y'all think made that quote?
Can you get more of a hint there?
I would say Mr. Fox, maybe.
Well, he probably has said
Can
that.
you have a genre of person?
I could have.
It's maybe 1700s.
So somebody that is a treasure hunter likes to hunt.
1700s?
Could have been. I'm not sure when.
More than any gold
His
or
initials
treasure.
are DC.
DC.
All right, I'm just going to have to tell you because this is good. We need to move on.
1700s?
Oh, I'm not sure. Davy Crockett. When was Davy Crockett?
Okay. Whenever
Davy
he was,
Crockett,
he was.
Wasn't that like 1800s?
Yep.
Could have been early 1800s.
Early,
what I said.
yeah.
Late
Maybe.
1700s, early 1800s.
Well, good
Davy
for him.
Crockett.
Davy Crockett.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, he figured it out.
Yeah, he did.
We
Didn't
should
he,
tell
He
that.
was a woodsman.
Maybe we should have someone on a historian tell that story too, like we have some others.
Yeah.
Is it true about the song, killing a bear? Supposedly there was a tree where somebody inscribed "killed a bear here" or something, and it was all spelled wrong. And people thought that may have been Davy Crockett.
More legend and lore. Here we go.
Yeah, I don't know.
Never.
I think we need to dig deeper, Bobby, on another day.
Yeah, we can.
On another day. That's right.
So before we move on to our guest, I want to ask, has anybody got any blood on the biologic they need to call out?
Well, we have started.
Yeah, he has. They got burger grinding.
We started the dough
Wallace
management
house.
process.
Hayden,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's on. Yeah, he's.
Torch them.
He is doing what the MDWFP has asked us to do.
They did. That's right.
And to try to harvest your limit of deer.
That's right.
As quickly as possible.
They're asking everybody in Mississippi, by the way,
So
that hears this.
We are
all take your limit this year,
your limit,
especially the doe limit.
And we're big fans of that.
Yep.
As you know.
All of them, though.
There you go. Well, keep us posted there.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, so we got some
congrats
loins
to-
hanging up in the cooler, so it's good stuff.
Good for Hayden. What about you, Dudley? You got anybody?
I don't have any young hunters this week. Just hadn't had time to look and see what's going on. Maybe we can report that later. But one of my favorite musicians killed a beautiful, looked like a 7 or 8 year old buck in Texas, Paul Cauthen, Big Velvet.
That's
A
the
lot
name
of
his
our
band
listeners know
is
about
Big
Paul
Velvet.
Cawthon.
The deer was in velvet.
Big Velvet's
That's
name.
his nickname, is Big Velvet.
The
That
deer?
was the deer's nickname.
No, that is Paul Cawthon's nickname.
What's the band name?
Paul Cawthon.
Oh, my bad. Whoops. I'll have to listen.
Yeah,
Pay
good
attention.
stuff.
That's right.
So
stuff.
I've got one. There's
Oh, yeah.
y'all know I really like this guy. We've had him on here, Zach Crowley.
Yeah,
With
yeah,
his
yeah.
dog. But there was a post he made over the weekend where he helped a young lady named Caitlin Easley. She killed a monster buck, and it got across a big creek, maybe a small river. I'm not sure where it was. She had to wade across, look like up to her, just under her chin to get to the deer.
She's
I think
hardcore.
it's a big buck. So I just wanted to say congratulations to her. She had on some old breakup.
Oh, yeah.
that's cool.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of breakup, Jason got broke up over there, didn't he?
I didn't have any blood on the biologic, but I do have blood on the forehead.
Oh, goodness.
Scoped.
Yeah, he got a new rifle and
You got to be careful.
got to be
They're
careful.
gonna
out there,
reach
guys.
out and get
Hey,
you.
but
remember-
bring up a good point. If you're going hunting, shoot your rifle before you go hunting. I mean,
For sure.
just
For
a
shizzle.
lot of people
But it's-
forget to do it. Even if you shot it last year or zone, do yourself a favor. And go
Yes,
shoot it one
that's
time
true.
before you go.
But,
Yep.
you're aiming at a weird angle. A lot of, you go and shoot a gun on the range and you shoot it a lot is a lot different than, having a rest on a shooting house up on top of a hill, looking down.
Right.
You end up
Yep.
getting closer to that scope, and
Yep.
that's usually what
Well, the
happens.
excitement prevails, and you'll.
You ever been
Easy
scoped,
time.
actually?
I have actually not. I've been with Daniel. He got hit hard once, and I remember Jesse got hammered one time,
did
like
one
bad.
She did
Yep.
get hammered.
Blood all over her face,
Scared me.
and it's funny. He didn't. He was in such shock. He killed the deer. It was a doe.
Yeah.
We just lay on the ground at the old cotton mill out there when they were little. And he looked back kind of shocked, and I could just see that crimson crease right over his eye. And I said, "You okay?" "I think so." And then blood started running everywhere. And I said, "Oh, my gosh." And he put his hand up like that, and then he started, and then he freaked out. But it cut him.
that
It
area
cut him. It
bleeds.
cut him
No,
bad.
your face
You know, with the
bleeds,
scope
ears,
at the
all
time,
of it
I
goes.
think, I won't call it a brand, but it had like a little rubber ring, but it still, buddy, it popped him.
It'll get you.
Another reason to get a suppressor on the end of your deer
It
rifle.
is.
Yeah, good point.
Nosler.
Yeah, get rid of that kick.
Silencer Central.
It sure knocks it down. It's amazing, performance-wise. Everybody ought to own one now.
So look, guys, let's just kind of. I'm looking over here at the screen,
A legend.
Mr.
No doubt about
Marlin
it.
Watkins,
There we go.
and look at those. Well, first off,
yeah.
welcome, Mr. Marlin.
Thank you.
And Bobby is
Glad to
completely
meet you.
jealous of that deer on your wall. I can tell you right now.
Antler envy.
Golly,
Bobby
what a
gets it
buck.
quick.
And what a cool turkey mount, too, I got to say.
Can you tell us about a couple of those deer back there? What's going on? Those are huge.
Well, like I say, I do manage the farm for turkeys, deer, and waterfowl. And that 200-inch deer, the wide deer,
Oh,
we had no history with that deer. Jason hunted. He called me one night at 9 o'clock and said, I shot a deer. Said, it's at least 140 inches. And I said, well, I'll be over. So I drove down this little power line on the gator, and I could see his lake down in there. And as I got close to him, his stuttering was even more intense. He's like, it's bigger than 140.
I'd say.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a beautiful 200-inch deer.
It is beautiful.
Man.
Well, you're doing something right
Ended
there.
up being the largest bow kill in Columbiana County. So that's quite a
Thing
honor.
is huge.
That's a giant.
One
deer.
in the center, he shot also on the farm. So we do have some beautiful deer. My neighbors' property and mine come together like this, and we're more like brothers than we are neighbors. And they've shot some horrendous deer.
That's the best story of all, when you see people
Yeah,
working together and makes your farm twice as big or more, and then
Right.
you got someone you cooperate with. It actually makes it all the better. We've got a neighbor in particular with us that we do that with, and it always makes it fun.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
Because the other side of that coin is not good.
No, you're right. That's
That's
correct.
right.
Yep.
Good point.
So, Mr. Marlin Watkins is a legendary call maker. He actually made one of the calls that went in the Fox Vest, and he makes friction calls that are used by champions, all these contests. But today, we're not going to talk to him about turkey calls. We're going to do that we're going to go look forward into February to talk turkey calls.
Won't be long.
But he one of his main loves is hunting turkeys in the fall. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to learn about the traditions and learn about how they go about doing this. And they tell me there's nobody better than Mr. Marlin Watkins. So, Mr. Marlin, would you please just kind of tell us about the history and the tradition and how you guys go about hunting turkeys in the fall?
Well, I'll tell you how, being an Ohio boy, I never got to hunt a turkey until I was 30 years old, right? So 46 years ago. But I early on met Pete Clare up at Turkey Trot Acres in New York. Mm-hmm. And Pete spent his everything he owned building this lodge with a vision of guiding turkey hunts. And at that time, they were covered up with turkeys, and he didn't have any trouble filling spring, quotas with his hunts. But here he had a 7-week fall season and no way to hunt. So he started investigating, and he found Mr. John Byrne in Lynchburg, Virginia. And John would have fit right in with Mr. Fox, Mr. Tom Kelly. He was the picture of a Southern gentleman, right? So I met John, and John and I talked for 6 hours one night. We talked dogs, we talked turkey calls, we talked farming, we talked business, we talked Indian relics because we were both interested in that. But John had developed his own line of turkey dog, which they call the John Byrne Appalachian turkey dog. And Pete went early on and started using John's dogs, and he told John that he would make him famous. He'd make his dogs famous. And if you see, 90% of the TV shows you've seen with fall turkey hunting with dogs were done at Turkey Trot Acres. So John and his son JT went up there to see what kind of operation Pete had, because John was a little leery of these Yankee boys, right? So he told JT on the way up, he said, now you pay attention right here at the highway, because if we go up there to New York and that Clare guy has this fenced-in operation turning turkeys loose and shooting them, we're coming right back through here tomorrow, right? So they go to New York, and it's the real deal. Pete takes them out, and they're hunting flocks of fall turkeys. And so Pete was true to his word, and John had such a deference for Pete because of his investment of everything he owned into that lodge that he made a contract for his dog. You will not breed it. You will not hunt it commercially. Pete Clare was the only one that was allowed to hunt it commercially. So then Pete introduced me to John many, many years ago, and we became fast friends. And Pete and I referred to him as Daddy, because if we had a question about fall turkey hunting or turkey dogs, we called Daddy, and Daddy straightened us out. And we talked every week, and I used to go down and hunt with him. And we just became real close friends, and I've ended up owning his bloodline for the last 35 years. And they're just tremendous turkey dogs. Now, John's gone now, but his son, JT's still carrying on with the bloodline. Now, there's, that history goes back 150 years or more in Virginia. And most of it was very secretive, and the family wouldn't let those turkey dogs out of their family. And it was all hush hush. But John, was, I guess, more liberal than that group of people and wanted to share his dog with the public. And it's 1/3 how he got the dog, I guess. I'll back up to that. Was a man gave him a bear dog. He said, it was a Bloodhound. He said, John, take this dog, and if it barks in the daytime, I guarantee you it's breaking turkeys. So John took the dog and he hunted turkeys. And then the dog came into season, and his neighbor had a lemon and white pointer that was a turkey dog, not a pointing dog. So they bred those two dogs. And John was an agricultural major, so, you know, he bred Angus cattle, so he knew about breeding animals. So he took those puppies and he looked all over the country for an English setter that yipped when it got close to birds. And he brought a puppy in and bred it into that bloodline. So now he's got 1/3 Bloodhound, 1/3 pointer, 1/3 setter. So basically he has a bird dog with a Bloodhound nose. And the nose on those dogs are unbelievable. I've seen them. I can remember one day putting Kiki down on a damp day. And we were at the back of the property, and I can't go any further because I'm off the property line. And she hit, the roost is up there a half a mile, and she hit the track, and away she goes onto the neighbor's property. And I'm thinking, I don't know how them birds got out of here this early in the morning, right? You know, it's like 7:30. And pretty soon I watch her and she turns around, and she'd been backtracking. And here she comes past us, and away she goes. And about 5 minutes later, we heard her barking, and we could look up the valley and we could see turkeys flying everywhere. She had tracked those turkeys from the night before when they came up to go to the roost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, now that's a nose on a dog.
For sure.
A lot of times, you know, on the UTVs, we were using those Kawasaki mules at the time, and the dog's sitting right between you, and away you go, and you're driving from one woodlot to another on the farm looking for birds. And we'd be driving along, and all of a sudden they start pulling, just like you've seen the bear dogs that ride the front of the Jeep or the truck.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly what they were doing. And you just stop the mule, turn the key off, and they go 300 yards, and boom, they start barking. And I've seen that happen numerous times with these dogs, you know. But the whole deal with the dog is that they hunt like a coon dog. You walk the ridges because we're in real steep, rough country. And where's Kiki at? Well, you've got a GPS. She's 600 yards over on that ridge. 10 minutes later, she's back. 10 minutes later, where's Kiki at? She's 300 yards down in there, you know. And then pretty soon you hear the barking. And then if you're lucky and they're up high, you can actually see the break. If the leaves are gone, you'll see birds flying. A lot of times you'll have birds run by you. And then 5 minutes later, here comes the dog on that group. You would think that when a dog ran into a flock of turkeys barking, right, that 30 turkeys would take to the air, but they don't. Because I've actually got to stand up on an advantage point and watch dogs break birds down on a bench. The dog runs in, picks up 3 turkeys, barks and chases them, and 3 turkeys flush. Those other turkeys are just milling around. The dog comes back, picks up 5 more turkeys, goes out this way, barking. Those dogs take off. Comes back, picks up a turkey, flushes it right up over your head, goes back, picks up 3 more turkeys, and they go that way. And it's quite a sight to get to see that break. And I guess you know, we're all turkey hunters. We're about sitting with our back to a tree and calling a turkey in, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get to hunt with turkey dogs, you have 2 big excitements. When that dog finds and scatters that flock, you can just look around the crowd and everybody's eyes are big and smiling, because we know now we get to sit and call turkeys, right? And then the second part is the actual calling of the turkey. So that's the essence of fall turkey hunting with dogs. Now, there's lots of ways to fall turkey hunt without dogs, because when we first got a season, we weren't allowed dogs. And we would go out and scatter flocks off the roost and call them back. And, you know, Mr. Kelly's books talk about him walking ridges and hearing them scratching, you know, charging them, shooting guns over their head and scattering them. So, you know, the dog makes your life much easier as a fall turkey hunter. So that's the essence of it. Now, all the details of it, right, is you say the dog has scattered the birds. Now, what did the dog break? Did it break a family group, you know, hens and poults? Did it break Jake and a halves, you know, or Jake's last spring, which are going to be our 2-year-olds this spring?
I like that, Jake and a half.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or did it break big old adult gobblers with 10 and 12-inch beards hanging on them, 1 1/4 inch, 1 1.5 inch spurs? 3 totally different groups of animals, 3 totally different scenarios on what you do with them. So, you know, when that dog breaks the birds, we usually go up and try to investigate the scratching. So if you find scratching and you have lots of little scratching spread out and an occasional big scratching up against a log or a tree, well, that's probably a family group with young gobblers in it. If you go up and it's all big scratching, all up against logs and trees, well, that's either adult gobblers or Jake and a halves. Well, that family group most likely is going to start calling within an hour and a half. And you're going to listen to adult hens early in the year doing assembly yelping. As soon as she does, everybody shuts up. But before that happens, you're going to listen to Jenny hens keying. You're going to listen to young gobblers keying and gobbler yelping. You might listen to some adult hen that didn't have bolts, just plain yelping and cutting and clucking. If you break the Jake and a halves of the gobblers, it may take 3-4 hours for them to start calling. You have to do all gobbler talk. They may never talk at all. You may sit on them from 10 in the morning till dark and go back in before daylight the next morning, and you hear a bird tree yelping. And, you know, I'll never forget one time we broke a flock late in the day. Just a little bit of calling, didn't know what we broke. Went in the next morning and this bird starts tree calling. So I said to myself, well, that's a big old adult hen tree calling. And I start tree calling to her. And she's getting more excited. And you can tell she's getting ready to fly down. But just before she did, she gobbled. And I went like, uh-oh. So she hit the ground on the other ridge. And I gobbled, and gobbler yelped. And 5 minutes later, he was standing 30 yards in front of us. So it was just, and I think that's my fascination with the fall hunting is I love dogs. I love, I don't care if it's a Labrador. Mm-hmm. I don't care if it's a Draught. I don't care if it's a pointed dog. I don't care if it's a coon dog, a bear dog, a turkey dog. I love a well-trained dog, and I love hunting behind dogs. So I get all the enjoyment of that. But as a call maker, I get the enjoyment of being required to replicate the sound that I'm hearing, because no big old gobbler is going to come to hen calling in November. He's just not doing it. If I'm not a gobbler, he's not coming to me. If he does, it's a rare day, right? And a young gobbler's not going to come to a little Jenny hen going beep, beep, yip, 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 yip. He's just not doing it. He wants to hear gobbler keys and gobbler yelps, and you actually hear these birds teaching themselves how to gobble. You know, they rattle. You know, I don't know if this sound.
Oh yeah.
I would say so. Now you have my attention.
See these people? When the clock strikes 5, it's not the end. It's just the beginning. They have to do these things. They have to do those things. Enter the all-new LS Tractor MT2 and MT2E, a relentless force of innovation. Redesigned with a new hood and cab built for comfort and visibility, with enhanced lifting capacity to get the job done. Making these people the ones everyone else calls those people. Visit your local LS Tractor dealer today.
Moultrie was first in feeders since 1979 and is the leader in total game management. They're taking feeding to another level with the new Ranch Series line of durable and versatile feeders, perfect for both wildlife and domestic livestock. So Dudley, you can feed your goats. Whether you're a deer hunter, a hobby farmer, a land manager, or a rancher, Moultrie has you covered with several kit options, including a rotating auger, broadcast, or a gravity kit. And these feeders are 300 or 450 pounds. They're big feeders. All right, so guys, Moultrie is offering our listeners a 15% site-wide discount at MoultrieFeeders.com. Use code Mossy Oak with a capital M, Mossy Oak, at MoultrieFeeders.com and get that 15% discount.
Tuxie, do you hear a lot of birds in the fall gobble?
You know, no, I don't. Now, there was a period when we heard them really frequently around here, but where I grew up, you know, so to add on to his, I mean, I grew up where there was always a fall season, so we hunted them. My first turkey I ever killed, I think I mentioned, was in January. And there was just, Daddy and I were just hunting and went around this curve and we saw a bunch of jakes in a food plot out there. We didn't break them up or anything. Most people did, but we didn't have dogs to do it, which actually sounds like it would make it more fun. But people a lot of times would just run into them and shoot their gun. And their point was it really doesn't matter how bad you spook them. It matters how dispersed you get them, where they don't all fly off in the same direction, where they wanted to make them just scatter and really way away from each other. And then they would just walk right into where they'd scatter them from close and build a big blind and then just sit there. And, you know, it depends on for me, the few times we did scatter and hunt them, the younger they were, the quicker they would start getting lonely. And sometimes it wasn't 30 minutes. And there was once a couple of them start and the rest of them start.
That kikiing that you hear in the fall, it is so pretty to listen to.
Yeah.
And it can be constant.
Yeah, and I mean, there was always, I thought as a kid too, that, I mean, it's kind of a different part of the country, you know, and they're, you know, it's a place where they had them, and they're the pure old originals thing. So the only time I ever remember a lot of gobbling was when I had split some up right before dark, and they were longbeards, you know. And so then it got dark and nothing happened, so I went back the next morning, and they were all gobbling, and some of them pretty passionately, but that was because they were split up and getting back together. But it didn't happen much. We didn't hear. But around here, and then in some of the places in the Midwest I've been, there is gobbling in the fall.
So, Mr. Marlin, when after they're busted up, do you call the dog back and will the dog just lay there by your side? You cover him up with a coat or something, or how does that work?
Well, when that dog was 8 weeks old, okay, you know, typical puppy, right? And all my dogs are house dogs. You know, they're not kennel dogs. They're part of the family.
Oh yeah, only way to be.
You know, you play with that dog with a turkey wing on a fishing pole, you know, and you let them trail a turkey wing, you know, and then go find it, and, you know, and then you just do the typical puppy plan, right? But every night, or at least 3 or 4 nights a week, when their little butts about wore down, you get them on the couch and put them in a turkey dog bag, which, you know, is a bag that the dog gets into with a collar that goes around her neck or his neck, and you pet them. And by that time, they're pretty well wore out and they go to sleep, and you just keep doing that. And then when they're about 4 months old, one day they'll decide, you ain't putting me in this bag. And then you got to sort of hold the dog up and have an eyeball contest with it and tell it who's boss, and put her back down and pet her, and she goes to sleep. And if you religiously do that, when those dogs break turkeys, their job's done. They hear you coming, and they come back to you. And once they get the routine down, of course, a puppy doesn't know what the routine is, but they'll still lay down, and you can either bag them. And usually the first year I bag them because you don't want a dog breaking when the gun goes off. But after that, I just lay the bag down. The dog lays on the bag. I cover the dog with a camo net. Their heads out. That dog will sit there and watch turkeys walk by 10 yards away. And if you look down at the dog, you just see whiskers just twitching, but they won't move. They'll stay right there.
Does their tail?
Now, a lot of guys hunt these Boykin dogs, the little brown Boykin Spaniel.
Right.
And they just lay there. They don't have to cover them at all because they're perfectly camouflaged, that dark brown. So, but the burn dogs are usually either liver and white or brown and white, black and white. So they have enough white on them that it's nice to throw a camo net over them. And usually I'm not hunting. Usually I'm taking my friends hunting. So I'm usually tucked out of the way somewhere, and my friends are 30 yards out this way or 20 yards over this way. And so by the time that bird comes in, and they've already shot the bird before it would ever saw the dog,
Wow, I'm fascinated by the dogs. When they're laying there, are there times when the dog knows there's a turkey approaching and you hadn't seen it, but you can just pay attention to the dog and you know something's coming?
Glad you said that, Bobby. That dog tells you when a bird is coming.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear anything. You have no idea that bird's coming, and that dog's head's over here, and he's looking. And you can see their whiskers going. And I often wonder, are they hearing them or are they smelling them? But whichever way it is, they know way before you know.
Yeah, living with a house full of dogs all this time. We don't talk about the hearing, like we do the scent and stuff. But I mean, like ours would be inside the house, and because they can't smell out, and literally can hear. Diane can tell you they can hear the sound of my truck over another one.
They know.
And before it even breaks over the hill right in front of the house, they're up and at the front. And it's crazy how their senses are. And they're inside the house and they can hear that. And just, over time they understand the difference in, I guess, mine and another one. But they
sure
do.
Mine are the same way.
It's amazing. I think we underestimate the ears a lot.
So do they have any role, once you've shot the turkey, like if it, just say you don't have a good hit. I mean, are they?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a
I
great question.
wish they would had a retrieving instinct, but they don't.
Okay.
Not the burn dog.
So
But they will find a wounded bird.
I was just saying,
Okay.
yeah. So if I've taken actually Gus a few times and unsuccessfully, but just thinking he's not trained. I was my duck dog, but thinking he would certainly investigate that if there was a dead, if he had died somewhere and you couldn't find him, that might help. He has done that on deer quite a few times, even though he wasn't trained for deer. He tracked them because he could smell it and he could smell the dead deer and go to it. But I'm just thinking, that probably would happen if the turkey was actually dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've even had to go get the turkey dogs in the springtime a couple times,
Yep.
to try to track down a wounded gobble.
So you've been doing this for years. Is there a particular age group of turkeys or class that you prefer to hunt? Like, do you prefer fall hunting for the big gobblers or the young turkeys or the moms or the Jake and a halves?
Because this is such a social deal, it's like duck hunting for turkeys, right? It's a group of people.
Sure.
It's not like one person or two people going after a gobbler. It's a group of people. So there might be 4 or 5 of us or 6 of us. And So my friend Ronnie helps me all the time. And another friend who has turkey dogs, Gary, helps me. And generally, we take our friends and we have people come in from out of state and spend 3 days. So the whole focus on is getting them a turkey.
Sure.
So for that reason, I prefer the family groups.
Okay.
Because they call so much better, they come in so much better, they give you way more opportunities. But a lot of times, Ronnie and I will save our tags for gobblers. And late in the year, we'll focus on either Jake and a halves or adult gobblers, but we prefer the Jake and a halves because they're a lot more user friendly. I've broke flocks of Jake and a halves that have gobbled 300 or 400 times in 2 hours, and you have a path worn around the tree, because one's gobbling here. You think he's coming, and then he's gobbling here, and then he's gobbling here, and then you kill the very first one that gobbled, but it was an hour later. So they're much more challenging, but it's boring for some people, so that's why we prefer it.
Got it.
Do the turkeys that you guys hunt, do y'all have to say, well, we hunted those last week, we've got to go? Do they kind of figure out what's going on and maybe adjust the way they react to the dog and make it more difficult?
That's a good point. Number one, I want to say that where those deer are killed, I'm hunting turkey dogs there 3 days a week, right? And people are so worried about them turkey dogs chasing their deer away, right? And we're killing 180 and 200-inch deer, where the day before I was there with a turkey dog. So the dogs don't bother turkeys. But as far as, I don't like to break a flock of turkeys, hunt them. I don't even care if I don't kill one, and go in there the next day and break them again. Because pretty soon what you're going to do is, those hens, when they're raising those poults and they're taking around to find the right habitat, if they find beautiful habitat, but it's full of predation, they're going to take them a half a mile or a mile away, depending on how big they are, right? They're getting out of Dodge because the predation's bad there. It's the same way with those dogs. If I keep breaking that same flock of turkeys consistently, they're going to leave. So we treat our turkeys with kid gloves as far as that goes. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I had a man and a wife from Arkansas, customers from work here, came to turkey hunt. And we'd set it up 3 weeks ahead of time. About the time they're supposed to come, it's supposed to pour rain and 30-mile-an-hour winds for 2 days that they're supposed to turkey hunt. So they showed up at noon on whatever day it was, and it was a beautiful day. And we got on the computer, bought their license, and took off. And we went over and hunted one woods, didn't find anything. Went over and hunted another woods, didn't find anything. Went down little Foundry Hill Road that I live on. And there goes a flock of 9 adult hens going up the hill. Now, I've broke these birds 3 times this season, right? And adult hens are worse than adult gobblers. They just don't talk. They don't cooperate. So Kiki goes up the hill, gets a good uphill break, so the birds are scattered in all directions. We went up there. Them birds called nonstop. Pretty soon Jason called one in for the husband. He killed it. Pretty soon I called one up the hill, and I'm watching it come, and the wife killed it. Now that was the 3rd or 4th time we broke that flock of turkeys. The other 3 times, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, never heard a sound. We just left them. That time they called like crazy. Don't ask me why. They were either off their home turf, which is what I think a lot of it is. If you have a tremendous mast, right? like we had this year. Sometimes those turkeys won't leave a 300-yard radius from that roost tree all day long because they don't have to. Or if you have no mast, they'll find a food source somewhere and they won't leave that 300-yard radius from the roost tree because that's the only food source they have. When you go into those areas and you break turkeys, they're not going to call. They're just going to walk around, scratch, enjoy the rest of the day because they all know where that roost tree is. They all know where they're going to end up that night. But if you catch those turkeys saying, well, we've been eating white oaks for 2 days, let's go over here and eat some soft mast, right? And now you catch them half or 3/4 of a mile away, those turkeys call. So, and I see that with gobblers and I see it with family groups both. I've had unbelievable gobbler breaks when we caught them traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's good to know.
Tox, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just curious, are there different calls? Like when I say calls, not I mean like box call, slate call, different, key, club. I think about the long, they call it the assembly call in contests of a mature hen, but it's a long yelp, and that's what they, supposedly. And I've found that, when they're calling back, the boss hen and the, calling her bunch back is a very long yelp. I've actually had good luck with that in the spring certain times. But I'm just curious, at what times do you use different kind of yelps, I guess is the best thing, or calls?
Early in the year, we always start out with Jenny hen kikiing and Jenny hen yelp until we hear a turkey. And then maybe the turkey we hear is that mama assembly yelp. So if we do, we generally either get up and go run her off ourselves or take the dog and run her off. Because you can have 10 birds calling to you, and when she opens her mouth, the woods goes dead quiet. If you didn't do anything, they're all running to her. And as soon as they get to her, she's getting them out of there. So we never do assembly yelping in the fall, or I don't, because, those birds have heard their mama since they were in the egg, right? So there I am being an adult hen. Well, they know I'm not her, and they don't respond well to it. But now, sometimes you get 3 or 4 adult hens, and maybe one only has one poult in timing of the year. Maybe then they possibly would, but as a rule, we don't. But we start with that hen, Jenny hen. Generally, we hear young gobblers call back to us. Sometimes we hear an adult hen call back to us. And we just switch to that exact sound and mimic her note for note.
I tell you, there's a lot of strategy to this.
Oh, that's why I asked. I knew there had to be some. You reinforced one of the things I've said forever is everybody, for us, obviously, vast majority of what we're about is the spring turkey hunting, which is incredible, glorious, all of the above. And everybody talks about, it's kind of legend and lore, this bad turkey, these turkeys are bad turkeys, this turkey's bad turkeys and all. And I've said forever, in my estimation and learning, most of what makes a bad turkey is a bad hen. And I've said that you can have a hen might have been called up by some guy or followed a gobbler in or been around and been shot over 6 or 8 or 10 times in her life. You talk about somebody who's figured it out. I mean, most of the gobblers have been called up or dead already, unless someone shot and missed them or something. So, excuse me. I think a lot of times I've always said the bad hen is the biggest problem. And she educates everybody, including her poults when they're young.
Mr. Marlin, I'm assuming that you guys put face masks, gloves, and shoot the same loads in the fall that you would in the spring?
The fall hunting, and I always get upset with people. They come with these guns with scopes on them and super tight chokes. And when you're hunting a bird that's going in between trees, and sometimes you got this much head and neck to shoot at, and you have a 3-second window, and you can't be like searching for a turkey in a scope, and you can't have this pattern this big at 20 yards. So, I shoot my duck gun, and I try to get people to shoot more open chokes, and I try to get people to shoot guns they can swing, because the birds aren't, they're not standing there strutting for you. It's not a spring gobble. You don't have 70-yard shots because you can only see 35 yards, in the woods. So I shoot the same thing in the spring, but I don't take 70-yard shots in the spring. I take 30-yard shots in the spring, and I just shoot, a rib gun. And I don't know if it has a bead on it left or not.
Standard full choke, eh?
I just point and shoot,
Well, I've learned a lot. I didn't realize there was quite as much strategy in it. I suspect there's a lot of guys though that don't have a dog that would like to try this at some point. But it sounds like you almost have to be in the right place at the right time, and things just have.
There's a lot of woodsmanship if you didn't have a dog, and you correct anything I say, please. But growing up with some of this, there's a lot of woodsmanship involved if you don't have the dog in, like. You can hear a flock or locate a flock and they don't know you're around, and try to get yourself really close to them before you split them so that you really spread them out. There's a lot more woodsmanship involved than, you might have even with the dog. So there is a lot to it. I just know that as I remember, you had so much more success when you spread
them out.
Yeah. Someone say scatter them to hell's half acre everywhere than you would if they, too many of them flew off together.
Yeah,
and that is very rewarding. To do that on your own is very rewarding.
If you remember, Tom Kelly talks about the art of scattering turkeys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Not necessarily shooting one or calling them up in. There's the art of how you scatter them, because in those days, especially before even he hunted, before seasons were even, so they hunted them year round.
Dudley, do you have something?
Well, I was just going to say, my second turkey was a fall turkey. On the Mississippi River, there's always been a season in some of those counties, and we squirrel hunted. We were shooting those black and red Delta fox squirrels with shotguns, and then when you found some turkeys, I just remember my dad taking all, just running at them.
Exactly, I thought it was crazy.
Just running at them and shooting, and with the goal was to try to get them to scatter in multiple directions. And like Mr. Marlin said, we sat there and waited. They actually had these little, it looks like a log cabin that's 2 foot tall around a tree.
Exactly.
And those were everywhere.
A fort.
And we just climbed into one of those, and I just remember hearing Dad doing some soft clucking and short, few note yelp type things, and probably not near the degree Mr. Marlin would have done it, but it worked that day.
We never
killed a little jay.
Yeah, we never would go spook the boss hen, like you're talking about. That would have been a lot smarter. But I do remember Daddy going, if we don't call her in, we don't have a chance, because they're going to all come to her. Our only chance is to call her in. It's kind of like that in the spring sometimes when you got a boss hen. If you can call her, the whole gang will come with her.
Is there I'm assuming you prefer just going out in the morning, or, have you had just as much or better success in the afternoon?
Yeah, it's an all-day deal.
Okay.
We don't like breaking turkeys 2 hours before dark, because they just don't have enough time to get back together. They'll go to roost on you.
So, Mr. Marlin, growing up, and, I'm one of the older guys here at the table. Toxie's probably the oldest guy at the table.
Thank you, Bobby. I appreciate that.
But, growing up reading Field and Stream and Outdoor Life, when I was younger, and I remember seeing a lot of articles about fall hunting, but I don't see as many now. Am I right in that I'm not seeing as many, or
Well, there has been a reduction. Clearly, there's less. Just look around. There are less fall seasons, and with the growth in love of spring, mating season hunting, it's just diminished. And a lot of people, quite honestly, I'm that way too. Have just like what turkeys I have, I'm saving them for a spring hunt for me. And if we had more places in abundance, plus a different type of landscape than we hunt here, maybe it'd be different. When we hunted in Alabama, it was just a different place, different kind of setup and all.
Sure.
So, but we don't even have a season here. I think they may still have the only place historically. It's kind of funny the places that have a fall season in Alabama, where that area where they had turkeys when they were almost extinct, in the same place. One of the few places besides that was on the Mississippi River, where Dudley's talking about.
Correct.
Yep, the old original strain.
So,
But
Mr. Marlin, go ahead.
I was going to say, there could be an argument that spring hunting is more fun than fall turkey hunting, but listening to Marlin,
Absolutely,
Mr. Marlin, talk about hearing the gobbling and what to do when they're making this noise. I mean that is just as much of a game.
Especially
you're
with the dog,
playing
too.
the game with them, very similar to the way you would in the spring woods. So
another thing struck me listening to this, Bobby, too, is that, and admittedly, I admittedly have the prejudice towards the spring, and I always will. But I just thought about how having him on and talking about this and kind of honoring it too is a good example that hunters can set example for the whole rest of the country right now. So think about all this stuff and the politics and the election and all the stuff we just went through. And it's like, different people with different loves and different, things they like to do, the sports that they like, the way that, is listen and respect it and honor it and love from it. And it's so much of the country now, it's like, if you don't believe what I believe, you're an idiot. And it's so disheartening. And I just like, hunters can set the example. Like today, talking about this topic where, I've kind of been like, no, let's don't shoot them in the fall. Let's wait till spring. And honestly, listening to other people and gaining wisdom from them and respecting that different point of view is a good example, I think. Yeah. So, hunters in so many ways, if we'll just the best of the best, and I'm prejudiced about that, but the best of the best are hunters and conservationists and fishermen in this whole country, and so we can be the ones to set example for everybody.
Mr. Marr, looked like you wanted to speak.
Here's my concern in the whole world right now. Is we have a group of people, PETA, Humane Society, Friends of the Animal, set in every one of our conservation meetings at our state houses. They have one common goal: take all our rights away, right? Here we are as hunters, and I'm fighting this fight in the state of Ohio. Well, I don't want you fall turkey hunting because, my spring turkey hunting, you're my turkey, right?
I get that.
And the bow hunters don't like the crossbow hunters, and the crossbow hunters don't like the bow hunters, and the bow and crossbow hunters don't like the gun hunters.
Or the dog hunters.
So here we are all fighting amongst ourselves. This adversary over here trying to destroy us. And I wish the hunter would realize that we all have our sport.
Yep.
We have a passion for that sport, and it should be our right. If that federal or state agency says there is enough turkeys to hunt fall turkeys, we should be allowed to hunt fall turkeys. If they say that our deer season should be this long, they employ all these biologists, they study it, they get universities to help them. If they can prove that the season should be there, we should support each other that season. That's my big.
There's something for everybody out there. Just for me, and we try to stay out of politics, and we're going to stay out of politics. But human behavior and living your best life, we are all about. And again, you can have a very passionate opinion, and I may believe he's in the wrong completely. But we can still respect and love each other and go about that debate or present the case why or why not. Or I love what I do so much, but I don't have to do that in a way that puts the other one down. And I mean, I remind myself that all the time. I just think hunters have a better chance to set the example. He just laid out a great case for all these diversity of loves and likes and dislikes, and how they now, it's almost like the world's trying to pit us against each other. And don't let them. Because the one thing that I love so much about what we do here in Game Keepers, it puts the critters first. That is the one thing, Mother Nature, that God gave us. That unites all of us, so let's let it do it,
Yeah. Dudley, do you have something else you want to add?
Well, I'm getting off subject a little bit here, but a lot of us are deer hunting this time of year. We're seeing those turkeys in the woods and trying to learn what we can. In our area, we may not have a legal fall season. No. Do you have any kind of a tip you've learned over the years that deer hunters can use, to maybe calm the deer down? Is there a specific turkey call or something somebody can do when they're in the woods, possibly, maybe they're walking through the woods, to try to keep deer from getting scared and running off? I've heard this before. Do you ever blow turkey calls in the deer woods to calm the deer down?
No. But I'm not a deer hunter, Dudley.
Okay.
Dudley, I tell you, there's been a time or two when I've walked in bow hunting and I knew it was crunchy leaves, and I've taken a mouth call and just kind of just soft clucked and purred as I'm walking. And one time I can remember, all I had was in my truck was a Jake call. And I did that. And when I got up in my bow stand, it wasn't but about 15 minutes later, this big old longbeard came walking in there and looking. And I always assumed I called him in. Just trying to cover my tracks walking in.
Have you ever been looking at deer while you're calling at the turkeys and it doesn't spook them?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, many times.
It might be fun to just take a turkey call to the deer woods sometimes and just goof around with them.
Yeah, one thing you told me, I'm a big believer in it. If you're worried about that, and it holds true in the spring too, is like walk with an irregular rhythm, because deer, and especially turkeys, they just don't go
walk like you're scratching.
There's like the turkeys generally is like step, and it's irregular. And even with deer, if you hear deer, even in your ears, you hear this stuff all the time, and it's a lot easier to determine if it's just a squirrel or a human. Is like a very regular rhythmic sound. So, I've talked to quite a few people, and who knows if it makes a difference. I can't prove a thing with this, but they're big on having an irregular walk if your leaves are really loud.
Well, then on that note, what are some turkey sounds that folks are missing out on in the spring that a fall hunter could teach a spring hunter to use more often?
Good question.
Probably gobbler sounds, we gobble in the spring. Now we're hunting in safe places. We know we're not going to get shot, but we gobble consistently in the spring. In the spring, I don't pay much attention to what a gobbler does. I'm 100% focused on hens.
Right.
Hens. If that gobbler's cut you off at 400 yards and the next time he cuts you off at 200 yards, well, shame on you if you didn't kill him. He's lonely. He's coming to you. You're going to kill him, right? But the birds I'm trying to kill is that boss gobbler with 1.5-inch spurs that owns that 15 hens, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no use paying any attention to him. I got to get those hens to him.
That's right. Yep.
And if I don't get the hens to me, I'm not killing him. So, in the spring, I focus 100% on hens. And I've even gobbled. I can remember a couple years ago sitting in one field, seeing a gobbler and 2 hens come out in another field, start soft calling to them. They ain't paying no attention to me. I figured, well, what the heck? So I just took the box call and here they come. Now, it took them an hour and a half to get from that field to our field and to us. But that one call turned those hens. Now, from then on, I could soft call to them.
Yeah, we're going to go down the rabbit hole and talk about calling in the spring. We could be here for hours.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
Mr. Marlin, is there anything else that you thought, boy, these guys, they'll surely ask me about this that we hadn't asked about in terms of fall hunting?
Well, I guess most people are probably going to be interested in how can they do it without a dog, right? And Toxie talked a lot about ridge walking and listening and getting above them and getting as close as you dare get and then charging them and scattering. Another good way in the spring is to know where they roost. And if you know where they roost and you put them to roost, or you just know that they're going to be there, is just to go in. It has to be a half hour before daylight. It cannot be, light enough above those trees that they can see. It's got to be dark. And break you off a big stick and just start walking and tapping trees and maybe whoo, 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 until you hear a turkey flush. And once you hear a turkey flush, you just start banging on trees and barking like a dog and woofing and carrying on. And you scatter those turkeys. Well, they're only going to go 30 to 50 yards. So now you made that circle. Now you got to make another 50-yard circle around that circle. And you're still scattering turkeys. And they're only going another 50 yards. So now I got to make 150-yard circle. By the time I'm done, I'm soaking wet, right?
Yeah.
But I got them scattered. And then just get right back up in a beautiful place in the middle of that roost and sit down and wait for daylight and cool off, And that's a really good way of hunting fall birds.
Fascinating.
Yeah. A lot of effort.
Well, a lot of woodsmanship.
Yeah.
A lot of woodsmanship involved in what he just talked about.
I've just really, it's intriguing because I kind of came into this thinking, I don't know about the fall hunt, but this
I get it. It could be somewhat. And I was going to say, when I was very young to teens, at least, we were in the hunting club. It was such a cool place. And in the fall, we just went hunting. So you didn't, some of them went specifically just turkey hunting, but we just went hunting. And we'd have, Diddy had a drilling, had a rifle and shotgun on the same thing. I'd have a shotgun and carry a 22. We'd kill squirrels, we'd kill hogs. Hopefully we might slip up on a deer or see. There was just such an acorn-driven deer herd. You could slip around and kill a deer, or you might hear turkeys or run into turkeys or see fresh scratching and do what we talked about and scatter them. It was just, you just went hunting. Actually, they didn't have many ducks, but you could, might jump shoot a few wood ducks. It was just you went hunting, and I don't know that I've ever had any more fun in today's world.
That does sound fun.
But we've changed, And I wouldn't want somebody scattering my turkeys on my own property I've worked so hard to have now. But I would have a ball doing it somewhere else.
Some big woods somewhere.
I'm just so particular about the noise being made, and I'm sure it probably wouldn't matter.
So, Mr. Marlin, are you hearing as much interest? And I mentioned earlier about magazines. You're probably paying attention to that, or are a lot of writers contacting you about articles? Is the interest in fall turkey hunting increasing or waning?
It's at least holding its own.
Yeah.
And I think it may be increasing slightly.
Okay.
Because of you do see it, every year. Brian Lovett, Steve Hickoff used to reach out to me for the fall edition of Turkey Call magazine. And, I'd do a little article for them on fall calling techniques or whatever they were after, Sometimes it was about dogs, sometimes it was about calls. But I do see more and more on Facebook now, people fall turkey hunt. And they're not just using turkey dogs. They're using their bird dogs. They use a lab. The Boykins have always been a popular little dog. And then there's several breeds of turkey dogs, mostly droppers, Gordon setters. English pointers, English setter mix. So I think it's growing.
I tell you, my daughter, she got so excited when we were going to have Mr. Marlin on to talk about this. She has heard about hunting with him, and just it's kind of fascinated her from it, and it just kind of totally surprised me the interest that. I mean, she's a young new hunter, so to speak, and but she'd heard of. He's kind of legendary up in that part of the world, and
especially with the turkey call making and
yeah, and
you were talking about Jessie, Bobby?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, she spent a lot of time. She came and did an interview when I built the Mr. Fox call. And then TJ Johnson, who I trained how to make my fiddle call, was supposed to show up, and she was to interview him. And Ronnie and I said, well, she gets with a professional football player. She won't want to see Ronnie and I anymore, right? She spent 5 minutes with TJ. She was right back with Ronnie and I. She wanted to know about turkey hunting.
Yeah, she's fascinated with all that cool old school stuff.
Yeah.
Well, so we're going to do one in the spring on your turkey calls. I don't think we've got the wiring going right now to be able to hear any calls like we'd like to do this spring. But can you just tell us a little bit about your call business, and then we'll kind of close on that, please?
Sure. Please, it's not a business. It's a hobby. When I was a child, my parents were potters. We didn't have much money. My father was an inventor. He had a little wood lathe, and he had a little jigsaw, and he had a little table saw, and we had some hand tools. And so at 16 years old, I'm trying to make fox squealers for calling foxes in, because that's about the time they discovered you could do that. I'm trying to make squirrel calls and crow calls. Then I got into duck hunting very deeply, and so I made duck calls and I made goose calls, and then the turkeys came. So I started making pot turkey calls, and then I decided in the 90s I'd make a box call. So most of my calls sat in the corporate offices of Armco Steel and the Timken Company. And, they were given as gifts, and my friends all used them to kill turkeys with. And then the late 90s, Pete Clare talked me into selling a call on eBay. That's when call collecting became a big deal. Mm-hmm. So I started selling a few calls on eBay. And it was a hobby to me that, I'm keeping 300 or 400 men working every day. And I could come home and eat dinner and go out to the workshop. And for 2 hours, I didn't think about business. I just thought about that turkey call. And so in my retirement, I've kept that up. And somehow the stage callers started using my boat paddle for the Kiki run, for the big competitions. So I think I told you before, nobody's won Grand Nationals the last 8 years unless they were using my boat paddle.
It's a big statement.
Now they're using my one-sided box call and my two-sided box calls. So, it's just a hobby that I very, very much enjoy. And I get to talk to people from all over the country, every day about turkey calls.
Oh, that's incredible. And we'll have in the show notes how they can go and look at some of your calls. But I'm looking forward to in February, we'll do one specifically on calls with him. We'll get the wiring, the mics ready because his calls they sound fantastic.
Amazing.
So, look, Mr. Marlin, we always like to ask our guest a trivia question. We've got one for you. Dudley's got one for you. And one of our listeners has won a prize, a guy named Warden E22.
Okay.
His title of his review was A Pathway to Infinite Outdoor Knowledge. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah. So he has won a 9-pound bag of our non-typical clover.
My fave.
Yep. So Warden E22, if you'll get with us, we'll get that shipped out there to you. Dudley, I'm going to turn it over to you. Why don't you
say that again? A pathway.
A pathway to infinite outdoor knowledge.
Man, I like the sound of that.
Yep.
Okay, so I've got a question for you, Mr. Marlin. I'd like to think that you'll have a good answer.
And
so,
you are playing for a companion's shirt, Mr. Watkins. So,
okay, so just a little hint. It's a plant, and it does naturally occur in your area. So the question is, the seed from what type of tree has been used in the past by native peoples to poison fish for easy capture? So it used to be referred to as fish poison.
Yeah, I've spent my whole life studying early American history, prehistory, the American Indian in the Ohio Valley. And I've never heard of a tree that was used to poison fish or a nut.
Okay. Well, I'll give you another hint.
Could it be more of a shrub?
Well, it's a tree, shrub, sub-shrub, whatever you want to call it. But
they're lucky too, aren't they?
They can be lucky.
There we go.
Is it witch hazel?
Well, that's getting close.
What
Service berry?
Getting close.
Service bush?
All right, so
What's the state?
Hopwort bee?
What's the state tree?
what is your state tree?
A buckeye.
Okay.
There we go.
Well,
So Dudley, explain what.
Okay, so buckeye. So
I've never heard it either.
So the new growth of most buckeyes, but particularly the yellow buckeye, has a very high amount of I guess you'd call it a chemical called asculin. So the genus is Aesculus. Horse chestnuts, buckeyes, there's even other species, one in the genus Tephrosia. So you can just grind up a bunch of those seeds and put them like in an eddy in a creek. And it will stun the fish and cause them to float to the surface. And you can capture them. So nobody do that, but that's a common way natives used to catch fish. So now you know.
How about that, Dudley? Well, thank you for educating us on that. Well, Mr. Marlin, we'll get you a companion shirt out for you on that. And I would just like to say, I really have enjoyed listening to you talk, and the thought of you up there making those calls and you taking people on a historical kind of traditional type hunt in the fall. That just makes me smile. I'm just glad somebody is keeping that alive up there.
Well, thank you. There's several of us that do, and I truly enjoy it. It's, my passion is turkey hunting, and I guess fall turkey hunting is just a little bit ahead of spring turkey hunting. So I love them both, and I never miss a day in either season, but I truly love the fall turkey hunt.
Now, that's a big statement right there. Never miss a day. Toxie, that sounds like you.
Yeah, that sounds like what I wish it was me.
All right, Toxie, you got anything you want to say to him before we close this out?
Just thanks for a legacy we could share with everybody. Thank you for doing that. And hopefully it inspires some others in their own way,
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
And we're going to have you back on this spring, and I'm going to plan around talking to you about gamekeeping, because it looks like you are a number one gamekeeper with those deer you're growing up there.
Mm-hmm. I would say so.
And turkey and waterfowl.
Well, you've
man
talked
after my own heart. I'm walking out here to go work on a duck blind right now.
Yep.
Well, we're going in the morning because after Thursday we're going to be froze up.
I saw that. Y'all are going to have some serious snowfall and weather up there. Bring it on. I hate to say it, but I hope we get iced up. Send them south. Send them south.
We need them.
We need a break.
That'll come.
We need a break.
Well, Mr. Marlin Watkins, we appreciate you being on. We've enjoyed this so much, and but I'm looking around the room. I think that takes care of everything.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yes, sir.
Why don't you say goodbye, Dudley?
Goodbye, Dudley. Get us out of here, Cleveland.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Gamekeeper Podcast, and be sure to tune in again. Subscribe to Gamekeeper Farming for Wildlife magazine and don't miss the Mossy Oak Properties Fistful of Dirt podcast with my good buddy, Ronnie Cuz Strickland.